Distinguished participants, good evening. Let me start by thanking the African Arbitration Association for inviting me to give this keynote speech on the occasion of the 2022 annual conference of the association in Accra, here in Ghana. I understand that the theme of the conference is Africanization of International Dispute Resolution. This, for me, is very apt, considering my current role as the African Union High Representative for the Horn of Africa. This role, which I assumed since August 2021, is part of the AU's initiative to promote peace, security, and stability in the Horn of Africa. Since then, I've engaged with relevant political actors and stakeholders in the region with a view to entrenching lasting peace and stability in the area. Only last week, I led the AU mediation team to the first formal peace talks geared towards resolving the lingering war between Ethiopia and its Tigray region in Pretoria, South Africa. We are still engaged in discussing, and we are looking at things with possibility of a breakthrough. This will explain why I am unable to be physically present with you to give this address. And I hope you do understand. Since the African Arbitration Association is concerned with promoting dispute resolution in Africa, this accords well with my current role for the AU, which is principally that of employing mediation to bring enduring peace to the troubled parts of our continent. This is very important because it is only when there is peace that progress can be achieved and prosperity and security can be guaranteed. 4 years ago, an epochal continental event took place in Kigali, Rwanda on 21st March 2018, when the African Continental Free Trade Agreement was adopted and opened for signature. As you might already be aware, the agreement entered into force on 30th May 2019, and at the 12th Extraordinary Summit of the African Union held in Niamey, Niger Republic on 7th July 2019, the operational phase of the Free Trade Area was launched. 5 key instruments were adopted with the launch, and they are the rule of origin, the tariff concessions, the online mechanism on monitoring, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, and the African Trade Observatory. The significance of the ACFTA cannot be overemphasized. Given our continent's current population of 1.2 billion people for 55 countries. ACFTA is now the largest free trade area worldwide since the establishment of the World Trade Organization on 1st January 1995. It is expected that there will be increase in trade among African countries beyond the 18% currently going on. Production in the real sector, like manufacturing and agro-allied processing, will be stimulated through the development of new value chains. This is very important with the recent experience of the disruption of the world value chain as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war. Apart from strengthening our continent's economy, it will enable African companies to access and supply world markets. Incidentally, 8 African countries, Cameroon, Egypt, Ghana, Mauritius, Rwanda, Tanzania, Kenya, and Tunisia have started trading under the ACFTA, having gotten their tariffs on goods approved. Only a few weeks ago, Kenya shipped its first consignment of locally made batteries to Ghana. I understand some Kenya coffee was also included in the shipment. No doubt, other African countries are on similar track. This is quite impressive, and it is a good beginning. The relevance of these continental developments must not be lost on your association. Going by part of your lofty objectives, which is to, I quote, advance the use of international arbitration and alternative dispute resolutions as effective methods of dispute resolution of Africa-related transactions and disputes. End of quotation. You are primed to play a significant role in resolving resultant intra-trade disputes between countries in our continent and eventually companies within the region as well. We must never forget that the dispute resolution originally emanated from Africa. I recall while growing up in my village how the village head and elders used to settle disputes between members of the community. Their decision was binding on all members of the community, and appropriate punishment and sanctions were meted out for infractions. Sometimes restitution was prescribed in the form of providing a goat or certain farm produce by the offender. In extreme cases, excommunication from the society was part and parcel of a decision. These dispute resolutions by the village heads and elders were very efficient and helped in no small measure to ensure peace and stability in the various communities. I understand This is now referred to as customary arbitration. I therefore call on your association to explore the possibility of elevating customary arbitration to the level where it will be employed in resolving most of our intercommunal and inter-ethnic disputes in Africa. This is part of what my role entails as the AU High Representative for the Horn of Africa. We must be able to resolve our disputes ourselves in a peaceful and orderly manner, devoid of rancor and ill will. We must also put in place early warning and confidence-building mechanisms to prevent conflict. One important aspect of customary arbitration is that it is win-win for all parties. No victor, no vanquished. We are all winners. This brings me to what we did to achieve peace after the decision in the land and maritime boundary case between Cameroon and Nigeria, otherwise known as the Bakassi case, before the International Court of Justice. This case was initiated by the government of the Republic of Cameroon against the Federal Republic of Nigeria on 29 March 1994. It relates essentially to the question of sovereignty over the Bakassi Peninsula and the delimitation of the maritime boundary between the states, which had remained a partial one and which, despite many attempts to complete, the two parties have been unable to do so. The court decided that the boundary between the Republic of Cameroon and the Federal Republic of Nigeria was delimited by the Anglo-German Agreement of 11 March 1913. Thus, the sovereignty over Bakassi Peninsula lies with the Republic of Cameroon. With regard to the issue on state responsibilities raised by the parties, the court held that each party is under an obligation expeditiously and without condition to withdraw its administration and its military and police forces from territories which fall within the sovereignty of Cameroon. The social implications of the judgment are that Nigerians who had lived in Bakassi all their lives had to face the sad reality of having to evacuate a region that is part and parcel of them, but no longer their own region. Most people living in that area had businesses located there, and so leaving the area meant detaching them from their sources of income. Moreover, all infrastructural facilities, including hospitals, schools, recreational centers, and so on, that were originally put in place by the Nigerian government were to be forfeited, resulting in monumental loss of income. Another far-reaching implication of the judgment is the strategic or security implication for the Nigerian state. the ICJ judgment made Nigeria lose its eastern access to the Atlantic. This implied that without Cameroon's approval, Nigeria's naval ships cannot move freely to southern Africa. This was certainly not in the interest of the Nigerian nation. It is gratifying to note that the judgment delivered on 10th October 2002 by the ICJ met two willing parties. Nigeria's commitment to Africa Brotherhood was already noted in its foreign policy objectives. On the part of Cameroon, it already made an undertaking to abide by the judgment of the court, even at the hearing stage of the case. This undertaking was noted and adopted by the court in its judgment. According to the court, it, I quote, takes note of the commitment undertaken by the Republic of Cameroon at the hearings that faithful to its traditional policy of hospitality and tolerance, it will continue to afford protection to Nigerians living in the Bakassi Peninsula and in the Lake Chad area. End of quotation. This showed the disposition of Cameroon to the friendly and peaceful implementation of the judgment. What is most significant is that about a month before the date fixed for the judgment, at the invitation of the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Kofi Annan, President Paul Biya of Cameroon and I met in Paris on 5th September 2002 to discuss Bakassi Peninsula and other issues. In the communique issued at the end of the meeting, both of us agreed to respect and implement the decision of the ICJ on the Bakassi Peninsula and establish an implementation mechanism with the support of the United Nations. We also agreed on the need for confidence-building measures, including the eventual demilitarization of the peninsula with the possibility of internal observers to monitor the withdrawal of troops, an early visit to Nigeria of President Biya, and the avoidance of inflammatory statements or declarations on the Bakassi issue by either side. Thus, before the judgment was handed down, both parties and the United Nations were already expectant of its delivery, and preparations were put in place for implementation. The role of Mr. Kofi Annan is especially commendable for his ability to identify the potential danger posed to Africa and the world in the event of non-implementation of the judgment, and the foresight to take even anticipatory steps in preventive diplomacy. Preventive diplomacy refers to action to prevent disputes from arising, to resolve them before they escalate into conflicts, or to limit the spread of conflicts when they occur. The United Nations monitors carefully political developments around the world to detect threats to international peace and security, thereby enabling the Security Council to carry out or to foster preventive action. Envoys and special representatives of the Secretary General are engaged in preventive diplomacy and mediation throughout the world to help reconcile parties in conflict. In many cases, this work is undertaken in close cooperation with regional organizations. In close, ladies and gentlemen, let me once again thank the Africa Arbitration Association for inviting me to give this keynote speech. It is now my honor and pleasure to declare your 2022 annual conference open. I wish you very fruitful and successful deliberations. Thank you for listening.